Hello, I'm Penny Thornton and I'm talking astrology. On this particular video, I'm taking as my center point the new moon in Libra on the 21st of October at 12:26 UTC, but I'm going to be looking at all the surrounding influences and also, or perhaps even more importantly, I'm also going to be talking about the big breakthrough of the day. I'll come back to that in a second. And also, I want to talk about this interstellar object that has strayed into our solar system. So those are going to be the topics I'm going to cover in this video. So I am going to start with the day. I am recording this on Monday, the 13th of October, and it's about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And why is this day significant? It's not just significant, it's historic, because in the next hour or so, the US, Egypt, Qatar, the whole variety of countries, including the United Kingdom. Keir Starmer is there, Macron for France is there. There's a huge summit to be held in Egypt at Sharm el-Sheikh, and this agreement is going to be signed. And ostensibly, that's a 20-step program to attaining a settled, peaceful solution in the Middle East between Palestine and Israel, Gaza and Israel, however you want to look at these two extremes, Hamas and Israel. And yes, this is historic, and I've already made some interpretations of the astrology about this. I did that on my recent Friday Bite, and that will be Friday Bite of the 10th of October. If you want to find that, you can go to my website, astrolutely.com, and it will be on the homepage somewhere. If you just drop down, you'll find that I'm talking about what the aspects and the auspices were like for the ceasefire, which I think in the main I found very positive. And I certainly looked at the chart of Hamas in the sense of how did this, what was happening to that organization. And it's quite interesting. Their progressed Neptune is on their midheaven, transiting Uranus on their ascendant. And this really shows this is a point in time at which everything is both dissolved and changed. So that I thought was quite a good signal that certainly this ceasefire is this very important first step towards an overall peaceful situation in that area is pretty good. To get back to the new moon and the surrounding or the background to this new moon, where the planets are and what's forming, what's applying, what's separating, all those things that have a bearing on this very important period in time. In general, when we look at new moons, we're always thinking of new beginnings. We're thinking of new chapters. Now, you could make a point of saying, what is Libra? What does it represent? And we know that Libra is about balance. It's about harmony. It's about relating and relationships. And so we could say that this new moon in Libra gives all of us an opportunity to think about giving one or more relationships a new start and thinking of new ways to interact, or just generally allowing a new influence to come into our relationship life. But of course, it's going to be very important for Librans in general. Of course, the new moon is taking place in your sign, so it's very personal. This is about a new personal cycle for you. It has everything to do with your personal ambitions, how you personally come across to the world, which of course is to do with your appearance as well. So a new moon says something new. Is this a new hairstyle? Or is this a new kind of chapter for you in what you're going to be doing? Or is it going to enable you to get behind some very important projects and endeavors? Yes, it may. And that's in general terms for the sign of Libra. But if you have a birthday somewhere between the 19th and the 21st of October, because the moon will be in Libra on the 19th, and it will move through it to come to the new moon on the 21st and then move out. So that period of time really says the sun and moon are in your sign, and at some point there will be a new moon. And in your solar return, which is the chart that is set up for the moment the sun returns to its position of birth, you can then look at that as a foretaste, or a chart will help you to look at the patterns and the kind of aura of the year ahead. So within a day is a year. And I think when you've got a new moon in your solar return, then we're looking at, of course, new beginnings being a theme of the year. And it will be a pioneering new year, lots of new things happening to you, and lots of ways in which your personality and who you are intrinsically gets an opportunity to really put a stamp on things and to really feel that you are empowered as an individual. So those two things, I think, kind of, worth mentioning, even if I'm not going to go through every single sign of the zodiac to look at what it may mean. I usually do that unless it's an eclipse on the full moon. But another point, which is worthy of note, is that the new moon, which takes place on the 21st of October, is the beginning of a 6-month cycle, so that we look at the new moon in Libra, and then we look at the full moon in Libra. In other words, on a full moon in Libra, the sun is in Aries and the moon is in Libra. And that's going to happen on April the 2nd next year. So the things that you set in motion now have a completion date of early April, or the waning cycle from the 2nd of April, that's 14 days next year. And if things just happen right now, maybe you meet somebody, maybe something occurs and it has a beginning, then 6 months from now, you're going to see how far you've come. It may be complete and done, it's over, you put it in a box and put it away. Or it may be that a stage is completed and you're ready to move to a new stage. And I think that's particularly apparent with relationships, because we may meet somebody and those early days, those early beginnings are rather, well, we don't really know who that other person is. And by the time you've got to 3 months into the relationship, then all that dopamine is dissipated, and they're not clouding your vision anymore. You're looking at the real person. So that's often a key date in the forming of certainly a romantic relationship. And when we come to 6 months, then it's not that kind of experience, but it's more, well, we've been together 6 months, where are we headed? Where shall we talk about where we're going? So that often happens 6 months into a relationship. So those are things that I really wanted to mention. But I also want to look now at the chart of this new moon, because that will give us a guide as to various other things going on at this time in October. So if you look at this chart, I've set it for London, and aside from the fact that obviously I live in England, London is my capital city, it's not the reason I've done it for London. It's just that it gave a very good picture of the new moon. We could see it in pride of place, 28 degrees of Libra and 22 minutes up there, almost at noon, at the noon point, or at the 12 o'clock position if this was a clock face. And we could see in this chart other things if we bother to take our time and separate the wood from the trees, so to speak. And what I put at the side here is a guide to what is significant at this period, what else is going on at the time of this new moon. Well, on the 14th of October, Pluto turns stationary direct. But of course, like a great ocean liner turning round in the ocean, it doesn't just turn round in a heartbeat. It takes time. So Pluto's stationary position was already stationary days before that, and some days after, it won't have really got into its stride. And whenever we have a planet that is stationary, in this case Pluto, then it is extremely powerful. And its influence, and we think about what its keywords are, we think about its transformational properties to turn something into another thing, but yet retaining the essential nucleus of what that is. It's reinvention. It's not creation out of nothing. But also we have that process of elimination, getting rid of things that are done. Their time is done. It's inappropriate. It may be toxic. So anything in our own lives that we think about, Pluto is, if you like, stationary direct for us all and has some kind of bearing on lots of things happening in our lives. But if we think consciously about those things that are toxic in our life, do we really need them? And sometimes, we like the toxic things. I'm thinking of sugar, I'm thinking of sugary treats and things like that, which are very, very bad for us, but we still keep eating them. But of course, that's light compared to the fact that we often retain toxic friendships, toxic relationships, and for some reason we feel we have to stick in there, whereas in fact they're very, very bad for us. So the stationary Pluto is a wonderful time, really, to kind of examine in our own lives what is really toxic to us and what needs to be transformed. And sometimes the cosmos gets behind it for us, the universe gets behind it for us, and things just happen. And the reason why I'm mentioning Pluto's stationary position, even though it is, it comes before the new moon and happened by the time this video is airing, we're in a very Plutonic period, because if you look further down this list, you look towards the 24th of October, you'll see that the sun is square Pluto. So Pluto is a big player on our astrological stage in between from really the early October, certainly the 11th, 13th of October, right through almost to the very end of it. Now, on the 17th of October, again, before this video airs, the sun squared Jupiter. So the sun, we can see at 28 degrees, Jupiter at 24 degrees, 4 days earlier, it angled the planet Jupiter. Lots of things to say about this. Often in astrology, people get very concerned about squares and oppositions and sesquiquadrates and quincunxes and all these astrological aspects, and think, well, if it's an aspect of tension, it must be very bad. But no, it's not bad. In fact, it's not good either. It's neither good nor bad. What it is energetic. It's dynamic. And the hard aspects, the squares, the oppositions, the quincunxes, these are dynamic aspects, so they make something happen. And when you put the sun and Jupiter together, in the main, this is a good thing. This is about growth. This is about success. This is about joy, even. And certainly we're looking at these things happening at this point in time as I am recording this video. The downside of anything to do with Jupiter, and in this case, we're looking at the sun and Jupiter together, then we could be looking at inflation. Instead of growth, which we think of as good, the minute anyone says, oh, it's inflated, or we're in a period of inflation, it's a very negative statement, even though it means the same. Things are growing, but they're growing out of control. So there is also the potential for this as well, and we must look at that. But there's also that undertow, really, when you've got Jupiter in our midst, which of course we do, and we will have right up until that new moon, if not a few days after it as well. There is a sense of expansion and growth and goodness. It doesn't mean there won't be any events of any nature that aren't disturbing. That's not the case. But what we're talking about today, and also, if we look at the main thrust of events, then we're going to look at a certain sense of goodness and joy and expansion about them. If we go to the day before the new moon, we see that Mercury and Mars are together, as they are, as we look at the horoscope here. Mars at 20 degrees of Scorpio in the sort of 11 o'clock position, and Mercury at 20 degrees of Scorpio a few minutes later. So if I was to see Mercury and Mars in a natal chart, I would think about people who are very quick thinking, who act very quickly. They may act irrationally. They may act emotionally. So there is a sense here that things around this time could happen very suddenly, erratically, and without much thought. It inspires Mars, energizing. So it's energizing Mercury's principle of commerce, communication, discussion, and debate. And in a way, you could look at it the other way around and see that Mercury is adding the process of thought to Mars. Think with your head rather than your heart. But as a couple, Mercury Mars is quick. It's quick fire. And so events happen quickly, people say things quickly, and things change very quickly. On the 22nd of October, the day after the new moon, Neptune moves back into Pisces. It's been retrograde for a little while. It's continuing to move back and now has crossed from Aries to Pisces, and it'll go back a little way further before it turns direct. I forget when it turns direct, maybe in January or December. From memory, I can't remember. But by the time it meets its conjunction with Saturn, it'll be about 1 degree of Aquarius and 20 minutes, something like that. So it's going to, it's going to continue to move back through Pisces for another couple of months. And I think, again, it's going to cross over it's going to cross over the solar eclipse position. So there's a lot of things set to take place now between now and, let's say, January, that are going to be game-changing events, whatever country they may be and in whatever nature they are, whether they are big, sort of cataclysmic, nature-driven events like typhoons that we've seen in the past, earthquakes, or whether we've got major developments in the world, whether they're financial developments, whether they're other kinds of, breakthrough moments, game-changing moments. The fact that Neptune is on that eclipse and at this eclipse point, and of course that's where the fixed star sheet is as well, which tends to bring disasters at sea or things to do with waterborne disasters or anything related to water, although I would say oil can be in there as well. We might want to look out for those game-changing events having a flavor of the things that I've just mentioned. On the 23rd of October, at 3:52 in the morning, UTC, the sun enters the sign of Scorpio. So if any of you have got or are expecting babies, you'll know that if they come before almost 4 o'clock in the morning, UTC, then they're going to be Libran, and the moment after 3:52, they are right in Scorpio territory. Now, as soon as the sun moves into Scorpio, it is coming within minutes of a square or an angle to Pluto, and that occurs on the 24th of October. There are 4 points in the year when the sun connects to Pluto. At this period of time, we're looking at around about the 22nd of January, we're looking around the 22nd, 23rd, 24th of April, we're looking at the 22nd, as we've got here, 24th of October, and then we come to December, and no, December, we're talking about January again. Have I left something out? Oh, yes, I left the July one out. So we're talking about July, the 22nd, 23rd, 24th. It varies around that time. So whenever we get a Sun-Pluto connection, it does take us back to the initial conjunction. So on the 24th of October, we might be very interested in events that happened around 22nd, 23rd, 24th of January. Was there anything about that period of time that plays into this one in October? We'll have to wait and see whether we're thinking about global events or whether we're thinking about events in our own lives. This theme of transformation and reinvention is a good one to keep in mind whenever we're talking about Pluto, because there is a lot of fear that is generated by Pluto. We fear the dark. We fear the fact that this mythological deity was the god of the underworld. And so there is an innate, instinctive fear of Pluto. But if we're prepared to go into the dark, if we're prepared to look beneath, we're prepared to confront our own darkness, if you like, then that's what transforms the situation. That's what brings it up into the light. So a lot of good things can happen on strong Sun-Pluto aspects as well. Things are transformed for the better, but some things completely go out of our lives. I always say with Pluto, again, looking at at the deity itself, that Pluto was given a helmet by the fates, and this helmet rendered him invisible. And what we take away from that in astrology is the idea that you never see the events that Pluto has its signature on. You never see them coming. They just arrive. You're confronted with them. And often something is gone because that creates the vacuum in which the reinvention of your life or that situation or whatever it may be takes place. Last but not least, 29th of October, Mercury is opposing Uranus. Now, I'm going to be talking about that probably in my next video. But what, of course, happens when you get Mercury opposing one of those figures in that tripartite of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, and also Saturn, which is the reason we've had these very important alignments throughout this year. The minute you get a planet, a personal planet, opposing one of those three, you've got a new configuration. So that period around the end of October is going to be very, very volatile, even if at the same time there are the potential for brave new worlds and, unexpected things happening that turn out to be very good for us, which brings me on to the other thing that I wanted to talk about on this video, which is 3i Atlas. Now, a lot of you may not have heard of 3i Atlas. You're looking at me blankly thinking, what are you talking about? Do I need an atlas for this? On the other hand, you might have been caught up in all the, I was going to say gossip, but it's not more than gossip. It's hysteria, really, about 3i Atlas. And I just want to say that for some reason, when I first came across this and I grappled with this name, why can't they just call it Atlas? Why does it have to be 3i Atlas? Because every time I saw it, I wanted to call it C3PO, the Star Wars little robot. So if I suddenly start talking about CP3O, you'll know why. Or C3PO. I can't even say that one either. I'm not always very good when it comes to these kind of strange names. But anyway, for those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, on July the 1st, I was going to say an unidentified stellar object came into our solar system. It had been spotted in May and was also spotted again in June, but it wasn't really officially sort of seen until July. Now, it has been established thus far that it is a comet. And it's a curious comet, has very many curious factors, things we haven't encountered before. One of the strangest things and the aspects of this interstellar object that has caught one's attention is the fact that it sort of aligned itself with the ecliptic. and it seems to be able to, well, I'm taking a large step here and saying its course seemed to be designed as opposed to be some kind of random rock from the Oort cloud or wherever, wandering into our solar system and finding itself somehow passing and taking a closer look at Venus, Mercury, Mars, and of course us as well. It's heading closer and closer to the sun. And I think at the moment it's coming towards what they call perihelion, which means its closest point to the sun. We won't be able to see it thereafter until it comes out of that, the other side. And it'll be interesting to find out what we're left with, because we're not sure what will happen when this interstellar object really gets so close to the sun. Now, if we think about what comets are, they're really, I think somebody called them a sort of like a snowball, a snowball, a dirty snowball, made up of planetary bits and pieces kind of hurtling around its momentum, triggering it and sending it through, traversing through the cosmos. And it will continually be shedding dust and the familiar kind of comet's tail, which is to do with all sorts of things that are really beyond my scientific understanding. But the comets that we're used to seeing have pretty well been, they're like normal. They go with what we've seen before, but this is very different. And, until we can get a little bit further on, I mean, I have to say there's been about 70 papers written already on this object. So it's of great interest. But I suppose where I want to get to is the idea that sort of came out of this. And I think there is a scientist called, I think it's A.V. Loeb. I hope I've got his name right. And he's quite a respected astrophysicist. And he put forward the idea that this probably isn't just a lump of cosmic rock, that it in fact has a purpose, and that it has an alien hand behind it, which of course got everybody very, very excited and terrified at the same time. But even he suggests that probably all it is just another version of an interstellar object that has crossed into our system, managed to align itself with our ecliptic, and there's nothing engineered about it, nothing at all. It just happens. But then this is also interesting in two ways, because, and I talked about this to my students on Saturday, because one of them had sort of asked me about the new planets. What do I have to say about the new planets? And, they're not new planets per se. I mean, there are hundreds of new planets being observed this year, but they're outside our solar system. We're discovering new planets all the time, but they're not within our solar system. What we have found really over the past few decades is a little group of objects, they're called Centaur objects, that lie within our solar system, but in between Jupiter and Neptune. Chiron is one of those objects, and there's Makemake and Chariklos, a few others. But at this stage, trying to incorporate all the moving objects that we're discovering into a map, a recognizable astrological map. So we start to take them seriously as archetypes that we need to know. We're a little way off that. Of course, Chiron is an exception to that rule. We've been working with Chiron since 1977, and we are beginning to understand both mythologically from the myth and through experience, which is what really matters, what Chiron represents. The others, maybe they will truly be incorporated at some point, but not now, which brings me back to the idea of discoveries being made, wanderers into our solar system. Now, there is a sense of meaningful synchronicity I mean, this has been an extraordinary year, 2025. I mean, you don't need me to go through all the events that have had us gripped to our seats, our eyes wide open. And I talked a lot about the alignments that we've never seen before consistently presiding over these extraordinary events. It's the way Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto are gathered together and everything else that comes past it, forming these very grand alignments. We've seen it that way. And they have presided over extraordinary events in our time. And if we look at something that comes in and we pay attention to it, like this, I was going to say C3PO again, but it's not. It's the 3-eye atlas. Then does it have a significance? Is this something we pay attention to because we as humanity are taking another step, and this is the symbol of that step that we take? And I would go along with that. That there are no accidents. Everything in a big way is non-accidental. Do I think it's an alien spacecraft, or it's something that has been engineered by aliens in order to come into our solar system? No, I don't. I don't believe that. I mean, if it turns out to be true, well, that's amazing. But right now, on the evidence that we have, I don't think that. But I still think this object has a significance beyond the fact of its reality as we see it. What is it? What's its composition? How's it heading? Why is it green? Why is the tail in the front? All these anomalies that have happened with this particular comet. While we observe that, we don't know exactly what it represents. I do think the fact that it's come in at this time is yet another symbol, if you like, another synchronous event that gets us to think, my goodness, pay attention. What's going on in our times now is not only historic, but it is changing humanity. It is changing we are evolving as we notice these things. That's what I want to say. And I probably haven't done as much justice to 3-eye atlas as I should have done. But then, I've not got my notes in front of me. I have to work from my little grey cells. So maybe I'll write about it a little bit more, probably after October the 30th, where we'll know a little bit more about what it truly is, which is not the way I really wanted to end this video. I wanted to end on a different note and bring it back to the historic day that this is. That as I came downstairs this morning, got my coffee and put the news on, there was an interview with, maybe I think it's Libby Bellman, and she is something to do with the hostages and families of hostages, this organization here in the UK. And she was speaking about the events of the day. And she said a very profound thing, which may be something that she came up with, or maybe it's something that she heard. And I thought, oh, that is something that I want to take away from what's happening at the moment, with this sense of elation throughout many countries and worlds, particularly in Israel, because they have their hostages back, particularly in Gaza, because they have, they're not being bombed to smithereens. They are reclaiming their land, so to speak. So at the moment, there is that amount of joy. But what she said, and I think this is something we could all take to heart, and it is, we must never turn our pain into hate. And I thought, that's such a powerful statement. And I think we so easily slip into that, don't we? Just in our individual lives. If somebody hurts us and we feel pain, we want to hit back. We want to hate. We hate them. But we shouldn't do that. We cannot turn our pain into hate. And I sort of wanted to end with that, because the day itself, as I record this, is so full of hope and full of joy, and trying our best not to remember the pain so much as the joys that are to come. Okay, everybody, that's it for now, and I'll see you soon. Bye from me.